Oh, hello again. I remember you from Killarney. We were in Killarney when I was doing the preaching on the streets. Remember? Yes. You're a friend with you today. Good.
So you're,
I'm on camera now, just in case this man doesn't want to be on camera. If you're not too shy, that man was a bit shy.
no.
You look like Mark.
No, well, I'm deeply spiritual. I'm into macrobiotics, and that's what Jesus was.
Oh, very interesting. Well,
And, if you've read Nicky Okuchi's The Gospel of Thomas, it's a mind-bending book. I've got it myself.
hold that a 2nd or pin it onto your coat, because this is a very good conversation, because I have not read all of the apocryphal books, but I do know that one or two of them came from about the 2nd century, right? Which have been questioned, big question mark over their reliability or whether they're genuine. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you say you've read the Gospel of Thomas.
Well, no, this is the proper translation from Nicky Okuchi. He's held as the world's most intellectual genius. He makes Stephen Hawking look like a bit of a beginner, to be honest with you.
But the Gospel of Thomas, if I'm not mistaken, there were some lines from it that are a bit dubious, such as Mary cannot be saved because she's a woman, but we'll turn her into a man and then she'll be saved. That doesn't sound like the gospel, does it?
No, well, that may have been in the old gospel in the Bible, but the actual correct translations have been redone.
But there is no gospel of Thomas in the Bible. That's the thing.
No. The 75 books were taken out of the Bible.
No, they weren't.
Yes, they were.
Okay, well, here we have a Bible with 66 books. You're trying to say that 75 plus 65, not good at maths, but I would say you're talking about over 120, 130 books.
Yeah.
And of some of them
we live in Killarney.
Oh, okay.
And I'm interested in talking with people like yourself, and I'm interested in disseminating the information we've been doing for the last 40 years. And it's just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing.
Okay.
And all the stuff that's coming out on the net's very interesting, isn't it? Have you seen it all lately, all the stuff about the star seeds and all the rest of it?
I'm not aware of that, but I am following something else on YouTube, which is people who are coming out of a cult called The Message, which I'm studying that and spending a lot of time doing that. Spirituality is one thing, but having the Spirit of God is another.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so, I'm 100% with that. I'm 100% with that. Yeah.
Because we meet a lot of people out on the streets and so forth who would say that they are spiritual, but it's down to their own interpretation of what they think that means. Yeah. So we meet a lot of people the lady who I was referring to earlier on, she was deeply into this, and there's a lot of people who claim to be spiritual, and yet they'll say things like, "I go by my heart, I follow the leading of my heart," and yet what we read in the Bible is the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can really know his own heart? If you examine your heart, you might think, I'm being honest with myself, but then you're so deceived in your own heart, you think, I think I'm being honest with myself. So it's a very hard thing to know, gauging yourself. How do I gauge myself? Unless I have someone else who can maybe speak into my life and say, yeah, I'd say you're off there.
I'd love to show you this book of mine. Yeah, I've got. Well, the thing is, I first started reading a lot of spiritual stuff back in the 70s and late mid 70s really, and I was sort of going into this sort of. To me, it was a netherworld at the time. Okay. But as I sort of started reading it and sort of evaluating what I'd read, I realised then that actually there's something going on here, and it's about a higher consciousness, of course. So, sorry, what's your name, by the way?
My name's Michael. I met this lady before.
This is Angela.
Angela, yes. I have you on video, actually, from the time we spoke in Killarney. It was a brief time, of course. And your name?
I'm Chris.
Chris?
Chris, yes.
All right, Chris,
yes.
Good to see you. Based on what you said, have you read any of the actual books in our Bibles?
What are your Bibles?
Well,
we use the King James Version.
Well,
I mean, I've heard all the different sort of conflicting issues about it. But it's probably one of the least adulterated ones anyway.
Well, I think I have read the book on this called The King James Only Controversy, and it's very enlightening as well. I suppose you hear this sort of thing from like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. Like you meet a Mormon and they'll say, we believe in the Bible so far as it's correctly translated. And then the next question will be, okay, have you studied Greek and Hebrew so that you would know that? And they said, no. So how are you going to know it that it's properly translated unless you are able to read the original languages? So they're just taking someone else's word for it that it's not correct. And Mormons, Muslims as well. They'll come up. That's why I have a Quran right there.
I've got the Quran as well.
Well, they'll come up and they'll say, we don't believe the Bible because it's been corrupted.
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you know that? Because our Quran told us so. Okay, so that's the only basis for it. So those sort of things we have to ask the people, well, have you read it for yourself? Because I've been reading the Bible for over 40 years, and I know it well, but I don't know it off by heart, of course. And I read different translations because I want to compare the message. And the top Bible translator at the moment is not a Christian. He used to be, he says, Bart Ehrman, and he will say, oh, there are so many different translations and all the rest of it, but he's trying to give out the message that you can't trust the word of God. But when he was pressed on the matter, Bart Ehrman's trying to give the impression that there's been so many different changes to words, which is true. There are lots of words that are not in every manuscript exactly the same.
Yeah.
But when he was asked this question, but Bart, does it change the overall message at all? He goes, no. That's like saying Americans spell color C-O-L-O-R, and we spell it C-O-L-O-U-R. Hold on a second. Does that change anything?
No.
Just tells you that you're an American.
Yeah. It's just a moot point, really, isn't it? But can you to me? If you'd like to chat more, I'd love to chat more with somebody. I've been waiting for a chance to sort of explain some of the work we've been doing behind the scenes.
Okay.
And the healing work we've been doing is phenomenal, really phenomenal. And the truth of the matter is, we've got the answer to all degenerative diseases as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd love to show you some of this stuff. Look, would you like to give me your number?
Yeah, well, my number is actually on our website as well.
What is your website?
livingrock.info. Okay.
All right then.
All right. Well, we'll see who else is going to stop and have a chat.
All right. I'll give you a chat later on.
All right then. Okay. Bye. Your destiny is what's really on the agenda today. You wander through life. You wonder what it's all about. And then it comes to an abrupt end one day. But the question is that the end? No, it's actually not. One of the key texts that I use when I'm out here on the streets, by the way, is Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27 and 28. If you want to answer this question, here it is. What do you think happens once a person dies? Is that the end, do you think? Do you suppose that it's just the end of the story? Like you've just unplugged, your phone has died, or your TV is turned off at the end of the day? Or is there something beyond this life? What about this? Here we're told, and as it is appointed. So there is an appointment which we're all going to have to keep. It is appointed for men to die once. That is mankind, not just men, of course. But after this, the judgment. So there you go. If you thought that the end of this life just ends when you're in the grave and then you've got nothing more to worry about, wake up to reality, because there's going to be a judgment after this. And of course, by coming out in public, people can ask questions that they wouldn't normally ask, and also maybe get an explanation to some of the things that we're doing. How's it going?
Hello.
You're wondering what I'm doing, are you?
No.
No? Well, I'm holding the Bible in one hand, and I'm speaking about the Bible, about things that people might question, such as, is there life after this life? What happens when we die? That kind of thing. You know what I mean? Huh? Who wrote it? Well, that's a very good question. Certainly men wrote the Bible, but not just one man. It's not one author. We have 66 books in there. Isn't that right? Can you imagine that? Some people think it's a book, but it's 66 books spread over a period of about 40 people who put pen to paper, and they spanned even centuries. So it wasn't one author in the sense that one writer, but the one author is God. Now, why would you ask that question? Obviously, you've never written a thing in your life. Did you know that? Unless you wrote in the sand with your finger. Yeah, well, not wrote it. No, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say he wrote it, because if you read it, it says Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they wrote that, okay? But it was God who is the inspired author, if you know what I mean.
God inspires everything in everyone.
Well, not in the same sense, because the word inspiration has a varied meaning. If I said I was inspired to come to Tralee today, it's not the same as saying God's inspired word. There's a difference, you see. One is coming through the instrument as the Spirit speaks, and the other one is just feeling inspiration. Like a person might say, I'm inspired to write a song or to paint a picture. Maybe a different use of the word inspire, you see. In fact, did you know that the word should probably be expire? Because the literal word means God is breathing out. It's the out-breathing of God onto paper. Interestingly enough, when I read, I tend to read out loud. Okay, I like reading out loud. It's good for the voice and practice. But when we do read out, sometimes little spits come out onto the page, right? And it's as if when God's speaking out, something's coming forth. And these men wrote as they were led by the Spirit to write what they were writing. Okay?
Don't write history.
Well, it's not just history. Not just history. Because there are history books here. There's also poetry. The Psalms are poetry. That's hardly history. But it's included in history. You understand? And there's also theology here. There's also genealogy here. There's all kinds of nature types of things in the books of the Bible. Of course, then you've got the Quran over there. Now, that Quran, Muhammad will claim that it was given by God, right? So we'd have to question, is that so? Is that so? Well, if it was so, wouldn't it agree with what God already said in this book, since it's supposed to be a continuation, right? Muhammad claimed that that Quran is a continuation of this. Yet at every opportunity... Oh, this one. No, you're wrong with that. The Quran wouldn't have even been appeared on the scene until about the 7th century AD, which is 700 years after the events of the Bible. You know that Muhammad was a war... Yeah. Well, I've been reading this. Look, see this here? I've been going through this, marking everything, just checking. And the reason is because when I meet a Muslim and they say to me, well, have you ever read the Quran? I'll say, well, I'm working my way through it. But how about you? Have you ever read the Bible? And most of them have not read the Bible. But there's a lot of references to the Bible in it. I've marked them. Oh, no. But it says things like the Scriptures. And yet, at every opportunity, it attacks the Scriptures. So it's almost like saying, oh, forget about those songs. Don't worry about that. And always it's the Quran. In the Quran, Muhammad's claiming to be God's messenger, God's final messenger. And he puts himself on a very close par with God. You've got to believe in God and his messenger. God and his messenger. My takeaway from it all is this. Muhammad was a warlord who used religion to further his agenda. That's it.
Was he before Jesus Christ?
No, 7th century. He's the Johnny come lately, if you like. No, definitely not. Well, of course, Muslims would claim that all the prophets were Muslims. That's just them adding that in later on, you know. No, it's very interesting. And of course, in the 20th century, there's been all kinds of things popped up. In the 19th century, we had the introduction of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons. They're all Johnny-come-latelys as well. Do you like being on camera?
No.
Are you camera shy?
A little bit.
Don't be. Okay, but I need you to use this so I can pick up your response. People want to hear what you have to say. Okay? Never mind me. It's not what I mean. I could stand here and talk about the Bible and stuff, which is what I do, right? Mm. But we want to hear what you have to say. Okay. So, do you have any opinions on? Let's say if I threw out a question, right? And I talked to those boys earlier. I just said, okay, do you know what the gospel is?
I have not been to church since I was 8 years old.
Okay, not exactly what I asked.
I know, but I know nothing.
Didn't say, when was the last time you were in church?
Yeah.
If I said to you the word gospel, what comes to mind?
I guess what people think the word of what God is. Like, it's written by other people.
Okay. Do you know it? If I was to tell you that if you were to Google the words, what is the meaning of the gospel, you'll find it means good news.
Okay.
So that's, you've learned something maybe. Okay, what is the good news that you would have heard in church all those years ago maybe? Is there some good news? Good news, we're finishing in half an hour.
I remember now that the priest that was in my church always used to tell a joke at the end of Mass, and that's all I remember.
Okay, so he's good at joke telling.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Okay. What if I was to say to you, let's say, for example, I could turn here to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and Paul was telling, in a nutshell, what the gospel was. He says this, "Moreover, brethren, I declare to you the gospel which I preached to you, which also you received, and in which you stand, by which also you are saved, if you hold fast that word which I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. For I delivered to you, first of all, that which I also received." Now here it is, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the Scriptures. So there's three things there he talks about primarily: the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Christ. And a substitutionary message, which was he died for our sins. As the believer, Paul would say, he died for me. The question is, can you say, he died for me as well? And if so, for what reason would he die? There's a lot. Then you start going into all different, meanings. Well, why did he have to die? Why was he dying for somebody else? And so I think one of the core meanings of the gospel is a substitutionary message of what Jesus Christ came to this earth to do.
Okay.
Any questions?
Can I commit sin, otherwise would Jesus have died for nothing?
Oh, okay. That's a good point, because Jesus did not die for nothing, okay? And some people will argue whether he died for every single person, and whether it was a possibility for it to have been done in vain. For example, let's say Jesus, before the world began, they're having this conversation, the Father and the Son. Son, you're going to go to this earth and you're going to die for all those people down there. And he says, okay, well, what if I do all that, okay, and not one of them believes in me? Will it have been in vain? Oh, son, I can guarantee you, I will draw those people to you that will believe on you, and you will bear their sins. Okay? Now, because every sin of the believer was laid upon Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean to say you say, well, in that case, I can now go and do what I want. Because you will not want to do that. You see, what happens when a person is changed from within? Their desires change as well. Okay? So I don't want to do the things I used to do. This is why repentance and faith toward God is part of the response to the gospel. You hear the gospel and you go, well, you know what? I need to turn from my old ways of living and turn and live a way that pleases God. So there you go. I don't know if that answers. What's your name, by the way?
Justin.
Justin. I don't know if that answers any of your question. But have you any other questions?
No.
Let me ask you a question real quickly now. If you, Justin, were to die today, let's say, for whatever reasons, this can happen to anybody, okay? What do you think happens next in your case? What do you think happens when someone dies, for example?
Brain dead, just nothing happens after that.
So the physical body, brain dead, that's is absolutely for sure.
Yeah.
And you won't be standing here anyway.
Yeah.
You could be fish food, you could be cremated, whatever. That's the body. Is that all that there is to us? Just a physical body?
I've heard nothing to say that there is anything after death, so I...
Right. So when you start cutting off bits of people's bodies, let's say arms and legs, there's still something left there. And there are people who believe we're just, grey matter, electrodes, brain cells, all of that. And others would say, no, there's more to me. There's my personality. And I have something different than, let's say, a dog or a budgerigar. I have a greater ability. I have a moral understanding. I know right from wrong, this type of thing. There's something moral about me. There's something different about me than animals and other things. Okay? And that's why many people speak about the soul. I've asked a lot of people out on the street, for example, do you have a soul? And they'll say, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met a person who says, no, I'm soulless. Because the soul is your life.
Yeah.
And they're basically saying, no, I'm not lifeless or soulless. Now, since that I've said that, okay, let me tell you something real quick. And this is a verse from the Bible as well, okay? A couple of verses. Hebrews chapter 9, because there's a lot of people who wonder, how can we know? Well, let's see if this is true. We'll read it. It says, now this is what it says right there. If you want to look at it, you can look at it.
Oh, no, I believe you.
Okay, now, and as it is appointed for men to die once, how many people die more than once?
I guess you could be brought back, like if you like let's say you overdose, you died, and you bring back, so you can die more than once, I guess.
So, in the final analysis, you could have a near-death experience, but dead as in that's it. You know, after 3 days, I'd say you're definitely dead or something, right?
Yeah.
So let's say in most cases, it's just a matter if you're dead. That's it. Okay. It says here, and as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this, the judgment. Now, whether we accept that or not, I'm just telling you what it says in the scriptures, that there's a judgment to come. And there's a lot of people who thought, hey, I got away with stuff in this world and there's no one going to hold me accountable. The good news is that there absolutely would be a judge who's going to judge us.
Yeah.
Okay?
And
And
won't we be forgiven anyway?
no, not necessarily. Why, if it's an automatic forgiveness, then people would say you can live whatever way you would like and nothing's going to happen, right? But if you thought to yourself, like say, for example, do you drive at all?
No.
Okay, supposing you were obeying all the laws. Why do you obey laws?
So I don't put myself or anyone else in danger.
Right. And if I thought that there's going to be consequences for breaking the laws, I might say, oh, better not, just in case. And so there's consequences for breaking laws. And how about when we're held accountable to God and His laws? Things that people might not think is a big deal. You know, there are things that He says, you're accountable to God. And everything that we do, imagine having to give an account to the Maker who knows everything and give an account of your life. The thing is that after the judgment, there's going to be a possibility, right? You're either going to go to the judgment and end up in hell, basically, which is a place of torment, or you're going to be in a place of life forevermore, the paradise of God. Okay, that's the bottom line.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
One of two things. Do you think God is all powerful, or do you think He's all good?
Yeah.
Do you think both?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think either.
Okay.
A, if He's all powerful, why is there so much suffering in the world?
Okay.
B, that means He's either not all powerful, and He probably doesn't want suffering, so He's probably good. Either He's all powerful and causes all the suffering, so that means He's not all good.
Okay. Those are very good questions and very good points. Except that it's where you start from, right? What do you think is God's overall purpose in being God? Like, what do you think? My job as God, like if He had a job, is to make sure everyone's happy and make sure everything goes smoothly for everybody in life. Is that His ultimate goal?
Well, I would hope so.
I don't think it is.
Well, in fairness, it mustn't be, since He has since He gives cancer to children, you know.
Well, why do you say that?
Well, if He was all good, he'd make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, that's an assumption. Okay, what if He says there's actually a reason behind things that happen that you don't know about, I don't know about?
I think that's pretty disgusting.
Okay, you may think that, because let's say there's two of the greatest events in the Bible talk about suffering, okay? One of them was somebody you might think is not very fair. Joseph in the Old Testament, okay? He was going to be killed by his brothers, but they said, no, we'll sell him off into slavery. And at the end of the day, he was sold into slavery. He didn't think that was fair. It wasn't fair. And when his brothers eventually saw that he'd become prime minister of Egypt and saved their lives, at the end, this is actually in the very last chapter of Genesis, which if you ever get a chance to read, you can read it. They came to him humbly, admitting that they'd done wrong in what they'd done. And he says this, verse 17, it says, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. You see that it looked like a bad thing that was happening. Even Joseph didn't know what was going on, but he saw it from hindsight. He says, I can see that you planned evil against me, but in one sense, God was actually working through a plan to bring about a good result. Even the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, that looks like a bad thing, because here was someone who's never done anything wrong, suffering. What did he ever do that was wrong? Nothing. So he's suffering, but why is he doing it? He's taking the place of the sinner like me, so that I don't have to face the judgment of God. Jesus took the judgment for me. So let's say, for example, that God says, I mean, look at the world. When he made all the world, right, in Genesis, we see he saw that it was very good. Good, good. Everything he made, very good. Now, when you look around you in the world today, you don't see that, do you?
Depends where you look.
Oh, you see suffering, you said, right?
Yeah.
There's pain, and there's suffering, there's death, there's all of those things. But that's not how it was at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, you can say, something's gone wrong. Something's gone wrong. What is it? Well, it's like this, and I've often said this. If you saw a smashed up, brand new 2024 car straight out of the factory, but you saw it smashed up by the roadside, you would never conclude that that factory is making broken, smashed up cars. You would have to conclude something must have happened to this. As the one lady said to me jokingly, she said, yeah, probably some tourists got in the car and drove it, right? Something's happened to that car since the time it left the factory to now, okay?
Yeah.
When you see the world and the suffering around you, death and dying, you have to say, something's gone wrong. What is it?
I actually have to go there.
Can you give me that? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for stopping on. Do you want to answer the question?
3,100.
That's very good. That's the first test. We've got plenty more to do here. Stand right there now for a second. Now, can you hold this?
Camera.
Yeah, because I need to get different responses to things. Okay. Hey, can you read that one?
God is nowhere.
Are you sure that's what it says?
God.
Some people see that and say
God is nowhere.
it might say that, depending how you read it. Could it say something else?
God is in. Oh, where? God is in nowhere. What? I don't know. I'm dyslexic.
Could it say God is now here?
Oh yes.
Could say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about this?
How many ladies can you see?
What?
Two, I
You want to
think.
hate it. You want to.
I see one straight away.
It goes a bit sort of.
I
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
I
what do you
see
there?
one straight away, and if I look closer, I see a second one.
Well, what do you see straight away?
The woman, a young woman with a hat
Young
on.
woman, and then do you see an older lady?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Most people see one or the other, but some people see both.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So you're Irish.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Pure.
so you see that you got that one right. Let me see. Put that down there for a second. Now, let's see. This is a hard. No, I'll tell you what. This will give you an easy one. See if you can read aloud what's written in the three triangles there. Gotcha. Because you're wrong. No. Aha. See? That's right. See? Paris in the springs. Okay. Very good. And the last test. You ready for it? This is hello. This is a tough one. This is tough. And the fastest answer, please. Let's see if we can get an answer to this one. Some people will say, I have the answer, I can't quite put my finger on it. You're taking all day here. Okay, what's your answer? Quickly. 3? 3. That's the most common answer. It's the most common incorrect answer.
It says in the box.
Yeah, but see now see here's the thing, right? This is what I'm trying to accomplish, okay? We often get people convinced that they are right when they are wrong. Okay? And the look on their faces is like, what do you mean? I mean, I'm right. I know which ones you missed.
Yeah.
Like,
the
no, that's not in the box. No. So did you see that and that and that? See, you didn't get that. You didn't get that. So the point is, of course, I'm out here doing some what's called street preaching. Some people can't see any connection between this. You know, is this the gospel? Well, put it like this: you may have read a Bible or at some point read something biblical or whatever, read it and not seen the message at all. May have missed something, right? And there's a lot of people who are saying, well, I've read it, but surely I understand it. What if you've read it and you said, no, I completely missed the point, right? I've asked a few people out on the street already today, do you know what the gospel is? And what interesting answers we get. So I'll ask you, what is your answer? If I said to you, what is the gospel? Do you know?
something was said about. Is it like Matthew called the 12 apostles?
You're on the right track when you say that, because there are the 4 Gospels. They are, but what does the word gospel mean? It's not a word you'd use typically today, like, oh, the gospel. I've heard it. I don't know exactly what it means. It literally means good news. Okay? So if I said to you, hey, I've got some good news, what a preacher in the first century probably would have done is walked into some town and said, listen, we've got some good news, gathered the people around and shared it with them. And what's so good about it? Well, what is the good news about? Well, that's my question now. What do you think the good news is? The birth. That's good. But I mean, they didn't come and says, got great news, Jesus has been born. Right? It was the death, the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Because you know what that means? It means that if Jesus has died, why did he die? And he was buried and then rose again. Why was all of that? What's that all about? So if you understood that Jesus was taking our place as our substitute and taking the guilt upon him that was ours, then he was innocent. He's being punished for something he didn't do, right? He's taken our place, right? So that we don't have to stand before God to be judged, because the judgment's already come upon someone else. So then he didn't just die and all that was it. He rose again the 3rd day. So let me ask you a final question. What do you think happens when someone dies? Do you think that's the end?
Depends, yeah.
On what?
If you believe in reincarnation.
If you believe in reincarnation. Some people don't even know what that word means. Never mind the gospel. Do you know what it means?
Or something like you're reborn. Yeah.
Not necessarily. Think of the word re, means again, in, and then carnation. Okay, so carne is like when you speak Spanish, you think of chili con carne, meat. Okay, it's flesh or meat. So in flesh, in flesh. Now the incarnation, you mentioned the birth of Jesus Christ, yeah? That was the incarnation. God appearing in the flesh. Our reincarnation is when people believe that you come back into a physical body of some sort. Many people believe this. I don't know why they believe this.
Because sometimes, animals can act weird. I've seen it on
I've seen lots of YouTube videos of animals. Yeah, and it's an amazing thing. But you know what? I don't think really, if you really press the point on reincarnation, whether it actually makes any sense at all. There's people who do believe in reincarnation are hoping for what's called nirvana. You heard of nirvana? Yeah. Not even the pop group?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, nirvana is the idea that the cycle is eventually going to come to an end. When? I don't know. It could be millions and millions of years of cycling through all this stuff, coming back as a dung beetle. Then the next time I came back as a rat. Next time I came back as a flower. Next time I came back as a lump of coal. No, it's all usually animals or something. And yet, here's the deal. If we look around us in the world today, we see about 8 billion people. Are we going to say that they came back as human beings because they were such good people and they've come back because they've learned some lesson and that's why there's such good people in the world today? Or do we see not quite good people?
You never know. It depends.
Well, have you noticed any crime, for example? Not where you live, but there is crime in the world. There's a lot of crime. Okay. And lastly, on the point of reincarnation, here's the deal. It's like being on an airplane sitting in the back, the worst seats you could get on Ryanair, okay? And then, the hostess comes up and says, you've been so good, we're bumping you up to a better seat. So there's more leg room, okay? Then after a while, you've been so good, we're putting you up into business class. Oh, this is fantastic. Then you get bumped up into first class. And you think, this is great, I'm getting bumped up all the time. And just as you're getting settled down, there's the noise of an opening door, and then a suction noise, and then next thing, you're back where you began again, near the toilets. And the whole cycle starts all over again. And this is kind of like a reincarnation cycle. I keep going out in this big circle. Now, I'll tell you one thing, the Bible doesn't say that at all. Whether you accept this or not, it's another question, but it does tell us in Hebrews chapter 9, I quoted this to someone earlier today. Listen to this. You can tell me what you think of this, okay? Here we're told in Hebrews chapter 9. You can read it for yourself if you want. Don't take my word for it, okay? Okay, listen to this. And as it is appointed for men to die once, okay? But after this, the judgment. People don't seem to like that. That's why they prefer reincarnation. But if there's one life, you live it, you die, but then there's a judgment to come. So Christ was offered once to bear the sin of many. To those who eagerly wait for him, he will appear a second time apart from sin for salvation. So the whole idea is we have an appointment and we are going to stand before a judge one day. The question is, if you stood before God, the holy judge, how would you do? Do you think you would be told, get out of my sight, or come enter into the kingdom of God? What would it be? Well, believing in him, the devil believes in him. I mean, we're told in...
Who knows their thing?
Huh?
Who knows that they're
I can tell you that. First of all, let me tell you this. We read in James chapter 2, verse 19. It says this, you believe that there's one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. So the devil believes that there's a God. It's not, and he believes in Jesus as well. It's not enough to just... But when you say believe, I have to ask you, what do you actually mean? Say, for example, have you ever heard of the story of Blondin, the tightrope walker? It's a hard one to say, by the way, right? Have you ever heard of Blondin? Blondin was able to walk across the Niagara Falls on a tightrope, okay? He could do that, and he could walk it blindfolded. He could turn around, he could do it, he could stand on one leg, he could do all that stuff. And he once said, how many of you believe that I could piggyback someone across the Niagara Falls? And there's a big crowd of people listening. How many of you believe I could take someone by piggyback? And they said, we all believe you can. But when he said, okay, so who's going to be first? Not one of them wanted to do it. So it's one thing believing, another thing trusting in that person to do it. Okay? All right, thanks for stopping. What's your name, by the way?
Sophie and Jessica.
Sophie and Jessica?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I didn't get an opportunity to say an awful lot today. My big question for many people is, what do you think's going to happen when you finally leave this world? Is there something after this world? What do you think? How's it going? Oh.
I mean, your story, come true, you know.
Huh?
You're telling the Ten Commandments.
The Ten Commandments. Yes, we do believe
I
that.
know you.
Okay.
So do I.
Yeah.
See, people don't listen.
Oh, they do listen.
Well, they do, but like, they don't understand.
Well, they may not understand, but God will give even understanding to the simple.
Well, he gives it to the people that should know.
Yeah, he'll draw them to himself, you see.
What's your name?
Michael.
Patrick.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Pat?
Nice to meet you, Patrick.
Okay, Pat. Lollipop Day. Very good. Very good.
That's for the house, yeah.
Huh?
From the house to the house.
Yeah.